In the days following Harmony's incredible song, the most remarkable transformation in galactic history began to unfold. Instead of immediately returning to their homeworlds to prepare for the next threat or to rebuild their damaged fleets, the representatives from all the different species found themselves drawn into conversations they had never imagined possible. The devourers who had awakened from their consuming hunger shared stories of the countless worlds they had encountered during their long campaigns of destruction. But now, instead of describing resources and strategic values, they spoke of wonders and beauties they had never bothered to notice before. A devourer commander named Vex, who had led the assault, found himself talking to Admiral Zex about the crystal caves of Andara 7, a world they had consumed 3 years earlier. "I remember the way the light danced through the formations," he said, his voice filled with wonder that was completely new to his species. "We broke them apart for raw materials, but now I realize we destroyed something that could never be replaced." Admiral Zex listened with growing amazement as his former enemy described sights of incredible beauty that had been lost forever. The old Vorthan warrior found himself sharing his own memories of destroyed worlds, places his fleets had been forced to abandon to the devourers. "We always focused on the strategic loss," he admitted, "but we never mourned the unique cultures and art forms that died." With those civilizations, similar conversations were happening throughout both fleets. Aquarian poets found themselves discussing the mathematics of their flowing verse with precise Iron Federation engineers who had never considered that numbers could be beautiful. Crystalline philosophers shared meditation techniques with organic species who had always thought of consciousness as something chaotic and uncontrolled. Captain Day observed these interactions from Harmony's bridge with deep satisfaction. This was what humanity had hoped to achieve. Not victory through superior weapons or technology, but transformation through understanding and connection. Lieutenant Hal looked up from his communication station with a puzzled expression. "Captain," he said, "I am receiving requests from several species asking if they can visit Harmony and learn more about consciousness ships. Some of the Devourer crews are asking if it would be possible for them to undergo the same transformation that created our partnership with the universe." Captain Day exchanged glances with Sua, who was monitoring the emotional states of everyone in both fleets. Her connection to Harmony allowed her to sense the genuine curiosity and desire for growth that was spreading through the assembled ships. "The transformation is not something that can be taught like a technical skill," Sua explained gently. "It requires a complete willingness to surrender individual identity and merge with something vastly larger than yourself. Most beings are not ready for such a fundamental change in their existence. But some are ready," suggested Lieutenant Hal. "Some are always ready," agreed Captain Day. "That is why humanity now has 12 consciousness ships instead of the 3 we started with 20 years ago. The universe is always looking for willing partners in its ongoing creation." Admiral Zex contacted Harmony with a request that surprised everyone. "Captain Day, would it be possible for some of our officers to come aboard your ship? Not to learn military secrets, but to understand better what you have become. Several of my crew have expressed interest in experiencing what consciousness partnership might feel like after a brief consultation with his crew." Captain Day agreed to allow small groups of visitors aboard Harmony. The transport process itself was unlike anything the alien visitors had experienced. Instead of using shuttles or teleporter technology, they simply found themselves gently lifted by tendrils of blue energy and carried safely through space to Harmony's interior. What they found inside the consciousness ship amazed and confused them in equal measure. The interior was not divided into compartments and corridors like normal vessels, but instead flowed in organic curves that seemed to reshape themselves according to the needs of whoever was present. The walls displayed constantly changing patterns of light that somehow conveyed information directly to the observers. mind without the need for instruments or displays. Most surprising of all was the crew of 37 humans who no longer seemed entirely human in the traditional sense. They moved with perfect coordination, as if they were all part of a single organism, but each retained their individual personality and perspective. When they spoke, their words carried harmonics that touched the listener's emotions as much as their intellect. Sua served as guide for the alien visitors, explaining how the partnership with universal consciousness worked in practice. "We do not control harmony," she told them as they observed the flowing patterns of energy that surrounded them. "Instead, we participate in her decision-making process. Each of us contributes our unique perspective while she provides the wisdom and power to make our shared intentions real." A young Krillian officer named Rin clicked his mandibles thoughtfully as he tried to understand. "Do you still consider yourselves to be individuals? Or have you become something else entirely?" "We are more individual than we ever were before," Sua replied with a smile. "Each person's unique viewpoint becomes more valuable, not less, when it is part of a larger whole. Think of it like a symphony where each instrument becomes more beautiful because it harmonizes with the others." The visiting group spent hours exploring Harmony's interior and talking with her crew. Many left with their understanding of existence fundamentally changed. They had seen proof that consciousness could expand beyond the boundaries of single bodies and species, that cooperation could create capabilities far beyond what any individual could achieve alone. Some of the visitors expressed interest in pursuing their own consciousness partnerships. When they returned home, Captain Day encouraged this, but warned them that the process could take years or even decades to complete. "The universe chooses its partners carefully," he explained, "and the relationship must develop naturally over time." As the various fleets began making final preparations for departure, an unprecedented event occurred. Representatives from 12 different species signed a joint agreement to establish the first Galactic Consciousness Research Institute. The facility would be dedicated to exploring peaceful methods of conflict resolution and studying the nature of expanded awareness. Even more remarkably, several Devourer ships requested permission to remain in the area and participate. In the new Research Institute, their crews had experienced such profound transformation that they could not imagine returning to their old ways of existence. Supreme Commander Vex, who had led the original attack, now found himself appointed as co-director of the Institute, working alongside Admiral Zex to develop new approaches to interspecies cooperation. The former enemies discovered they had much to learn from each other about leadership strategy and the management of diverse groups. Captain Day watched the signing ceremony from Harmony's observation deck, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. This was what consciousness ships were truly designed to do, not to fight battles, but to plant seeds of transformation that would continue, growing long after they departed. Sua joined him at the viewing port, her connection to Harmony allowing her to sense the emotional currents flowing through all the assembled beings. The joy and hope she felt from thousands of different minds created a harmony more beautiful than any music. "Do you think this will spread beyond this one-star system?" she asked. Captain Day smiled as he observed former enemies working together to plan their shared future. "Change always spreads," he replied, "when people discover something better than what they had before. Within a few years, I suspect we will be receiving requests for consciousness ship visits from species we have never even met." Harmony pulsed with warm agreement, her crystalline form glowing more brightly as she prepared for the journey to their next assignment. The galaxy was full of conflicts waiting to be transformed, and she was eager to continue the work of bringing understanding to places where only fear had existed before. The age of conquest was ending, and the age of cooperation was just beginning. The huge glass dome of the Galactic Council building sparkled under 3 different suns. The biggest meeting room in the galaxy was full of noise and fear. Representatives from 12 alien worlds sat in their special chairs, all talking at once about the terrible news that had just arrived. Ambassador Krell from the Vorthan Empire stood in the middle of the room. His 4 strong arms moved as he talked, and bright pictures appeared in the air around him showing destroyed planets and burning space stations. The pictures were so real that some of the smaller aliens had to look away. We have lost 17 complete star systems in just 2 months. Krell said, his deep voice echoing off the crystal walls. His red eyes glowed with anger and fear. The Devourers are moving faster than we ever thought possible. Our biggest fleets barely escaped their last attack. They show no mercy to anyone. They take no prisoners, and they leave nothing behind but empty, dead space commander. Yuki sat quietly. In the human section of the great room, she wore a simple gray uniform that looked very plain compared to the fancy armor and colorful robes worn by representatives from other worlds. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly, and her calm face showed no sign of the panic that filled the room around her. Next to Yuki sat Captain Day, a young man who looked even more relaxed than she did. He was working on a small computer tablet and seemed to pay no attention to all the shouting and arguing going on around them. His fingers moved quickly across the screen, and sometimes he would smile slightly at whatever he was reading. The delegate from Zephyria suddenly jumped up from his seat. His tall blue body sparkled with angry light, and his crystal hands made loud banging sounds when he hit his desk. "We need every ship, every weapon, every warrior in the galaxy," he shouted in a high singing voice that hurt the ears of some species. "The humans control many star systems. They have big fleets and strong weapons. They must send everything they have right now." All the other delegates turned to look at the human section. Creatures with tentacles and fur and scales and metal skin all stared at Commander Yuki, waiting to hear how many ships Earth would contribute to the fight. Some of them had been enemies with humans before, but now they all needed to work together against the Devourers. Yuki stood up slowly and calmly. Her movements were smooth and confident, even though hundreds of alien eyes were watching her every move. When she spoke, her voice was clear and steady and not too loud. "Earth will send one ship," she said simply. The reaction was immediate and explosive. The huge room erupted with angry voices in dozens of different languages. Some aliens roared, others hissed, and a few made sounds like breaking glass. The Krillian ambassador, who looked like a giant green insect, clicked his sharp mouth, parts together in rage. "One ship," the Krillian shouted. "One single ship. Your species has settlements on 40 different worlds. You have mining operations and trade routes and military bases everywhere. Surely you can spare more than one tiny vessel to help save the galaxy, Commander." Yuki remained perfectly calm, even though angry aliens were shouting at her from every direction. Her face showed no emotion, and her voice stayed steady when she replied, "One ship is what we are sending. Captain Day will be in command of it." She nodded toward the young man beside her, who finally looked up from his tablet with a small, mysterious smile. The Vorthan Emperor himself rose from his massive throne chair. His huge body was covered in thick armor, and his multiple arms ended in clawed hands that could crush steel. When he spoke, his voice was like thunder rolling across mountains. "This is completely unacceptable," he roared. "While we prepare to sacrifice thousands of ships and millions of brave warriors, the humans offer us one pathetic vessel. What kind of ship could possibly make any difference against 10,000 Devourer warships?" Captain Day closed his tablet and stood up beside Commander Yuki. He looked very young compared to the ancient alien leaders around him, but there was something in his dark eyes that suggested he knew secrets they could not imagine. "You will see when our ship arrives," he said quietly. "We should reach the battle area in 72 hours. This statement caused even more confusion among the alien delegates. 72 hours. Even the fastest ships in their combined fleets would need at least a full week to travel that distance through hyperspace. How could any vessel move so quickly while still carrying enough weapons and armor to be useful in battle? The Aquarian delegate, who looked like a walking jellyfish, flowed closer to the human section. Its transparent body pulsed with confused colors as it spoke in a voice like flowing water. What type of propulsion system allows such incredible speed? Are you using some kind of new technology that you have hidden from the rest of us? Captain Day exchanged a quick look with Commander Yuki, and both humans smiled slightly. Our ship uses very old technology, he replied. Much older than any of your civilizations would recognize. The crystalline representative from the quartz worlds made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. You speak in riddles, young human. While we face extinction, you offer mysteries and secrets. This is no time for games and puzzles. Commander Yuki stepped forward, slightly. Her calm presence somehow made the huge room a little quieter. We understand your frustration, she said. We know how this looks to all of you. But we have never broken our promises to the Galactic Council. When we say one ship will be enough, we mean exactly that. The metallic delegate from the Iron Federation clanked forward on mechanical legs, his robot body sparking with electrical discharges. How can one ship stand against the Devourer horde, he demanded in a voice like grinding gears. Even our mightiest dreadnoughts flee before their planet-killing weapons. What makes you think a single human vessel can succeed where our combined fleets have failed? Captain Day checked his chronometer and smiled again. Because our ship does not fight the way your fleets fight, he said. Our methods are quite different from anything you have seen before. Admiral Zex of the Vorthan Navy, who commanded the largest fleet in the galaxy, stepped forward. His scarred face showed the experience of 100 battles, and his uniform was covered with medals from victories across the stars. Captain Day, he said, trying to keep his voice respectful, I have fought the Devourers 3 times and barely escaped with my life. Their technology is beyond our understanding. Their hunger cannot be reasoned with or bargained with. How can one ship, no matter how advanced, hope to stop them? The young human captain looked directly into the old admiral's eyes. When our ship arrives, Admiral, you will understand everything, he said. There was no boasting in his voice, no anger at the doubts being expressed, just quiet confidence that seemed unshakable. As the great meeting began to break apart, alien delegates gathered in small groups to whisper about human arrogance and selfishness. Some wondered if Earth had secretly decided to abandon the fight and flee to distant galaxies. Others thought maybe the humans had gone completely insane from fear. Commander Yuki and Captain Day walked calmly toward the exit doors while angry voices echoed behind them. Neither human seemed bothered by the accusations and insults being thrown at them. As they reached the doorway, Yuki paused and looked back at the chaotic scene. They will understand soon enough, she said quietly to her companion. Captain Day nodded and checked his tablet one more time. Harmony is already on her way, he replied. She is looking forward to meeting everyone. Behind them, the alien delegates continued their heated discussions about human betrayal and cowardice. None of them noticed the small, confident smiles on both human faces or the way Captain Day seemed to be communicating with someone through his device. In 72 hours, everything would change. But for now, the galaxy prepared for what seemed like certain defeat, never guessing that salvation was already traveling toward them in a form unlike anything they had ever imagined. Chaos exploded throughout the Devourer fleet, as their own weapons struck their ships with devastating power. Brilliant explosions bloomed across the darkness of space like deadly flowers, as dozens of enemy vessels were completely destroyed by their own reflected attacks. The surviving ships spun wildly out of control, their crews screaming in languages that had no words for what they had just witnessed. Supreme Commander Vex gripped his command chair with all four of his clawed hands, staring at the tactical displays that showed his first attack wave being torn apart by their own firepower. This was impossible. No known technology in the galaxy could manipulate energy like this. What kind of ship were they facing? What kind of monsters had they awakened? His science officer, a creature covered in cybernetic implants, worked desperately at his station, trying to understand what had happened. "Sir," he reported, his mechanical voice shaking with electronic distortion. "I am reading massive gravitational distortions around that human vessel. It is as if they are bending space and time itself. The energy patterns are beyond anything in our databases. This should not be possible according to every law of physics we understand." Meanwhile, aboard the Allied ships, stunned silence filled every bridge and control room. Hardened veterans who had seen the horrors of a dozen wars stood with their mouths hanging open, unable to believe what their sensors were telling them. The human ship had not fired a single shot, had not activated any visible weapons, had not even moved from its position. Yet somehow, it had turned a devastating enemy attack into a victory, Admiral. Zex finally found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "Captain Day," he called through the communication system, "what just happened? How did you redirect their weapons back at them?" Day's response came through, clearly still carrying that hint of mysterious amusement that had puzzled everyone since his arrival. "We did not redirect anything, Admiral," he explained patiently. "We simply asked their attacks to reconsider their choice of targets. The universe is surprisingly cooperative when you know how to make polite requests before anyone could begin. To process this impossible answer, the silver sphere began to change. The smooth metallic surface started to ripple like liquid mercury, and patterns of brilliant blue light began racing across its hull in complex geometric designs that hurt to look at directly. Slowly, gracefully, the perfect sphere began to unfold. What emerged defied every law of physics and engineering that the assembled alien species thought they understood. The sphere expanded outward in directions that seemed to exist, beyond normal three-dimensional space. Its surface stretched and reshaped itself into something that made experienced space travelers feel dizzy and confused just by observing it. Geometric patterns flowed and shifted across the transforming vessel, creating structures that appeared to exist in more dimensions than the normal universe allowed. Parts of the ship seemed to fold in on themselves, while other sections extended into areas that sensors insisted were empty space. The overall effect was like watching a flower bloom, if flowers could grow in 4 or 5 dimensions simultaneously. Lieutenant Sora, aboard Admiral Zex's flagship, cried out in amazement and terror as her instruments struggled to track what they were seeing. "Sir, the human vessel is growing and changing shape. My sensors cannot determine its actual size or configuration. The readings keep changing faster than my computers can process them." The transformation continued for several long minutes, during which everyone in both fleets watched in hypnotized fascination. What had once been a simple sphere now resembled something that was part crystal formation, part living creature and part geometric impossibility. Tendrils of pure energy reached out from its core, gently touching nearby asteroids and pieces of space debris. Whatever they made contact with began to glow with the same peaceful blue light. Captain Day's voice came through the communication channels again, sounding pleased and proud. "Do not be concerned about the appearance change," he announced to the assembled fleets. "Harmony is just getting comfortable. She prefers her natural form when she has serious work to do." She asked Admiral Zex, his voice cracking with disbelief. "Oh yes, Captain Day," replied with obvious affection. "Harmony is very much alive. She has been looking forward to meeting all of you. Aren't you, girl?" In response to his words, the impossible ship pulsed with warm, gentle light, and somehow every single person in the Allied Fleet felt a brief sensation of friendly greeting. It was like receiving a pat on the shoulder from a beloved friend or a warm hug from a family member. The feeling lasted only a moment, but it left everyone with a sense of being welcomed and accepted by something vast and benevolent. The Devourer fleet, however, showed no signs of feeling welcomed or accepted. Their remaining ships began to retreat clearly, recognizing that they faced something completely outside their experience or ability to combat. Many of their warriors had never felt fear before, but now they were learning what terror truly meant. Supreme Commander Vex would not accept defeat so easily, even in the face of the impossible. He had conquered 1,000 worlds and consumed entire civilizations. He would not be stopped by one mysterious enemy vessel, no matter how strange it appeared. "Bring forward the planet killers," he ordered, his voice filled with desperate rage. "If we cannot destroy this thing with conventional weapons, we will use forces that can shatter entire worlds." 3 massive Devourer ships moved slowly forward from the rear of their fleet. These were the most terrible weapons in their arsenal vessels, the size of small moons that were powered by the compressed energy cores of destroyed stars. When planet killers fired, nothing in the known galaxy could survive their attack. They had reduced entire solar systems to cosmic dust and boiled away the atmospheres of 100 worlds. The energy buildup was visible from millions of kilometers away as the planet killers began charging their ultimate weapons. Crackling red lightning danced between their weapon ports, and space itself seemed to bend around them as they gathered the power to destroy worlds. The Allied fleet began to retreat in panic, knowing that even their most heavily armored ships would be vaporized instantly by what was coming. Only Harmony remained calmly in place, her crystalline tendrils swaying gently as if moved by some cosmic breeze that only she could feel. Her blue light pulsed slowly and peacefully, like a heartbeat, and somehow the deadly charging of the planet killers seemed less frightening when viewed in her presence. Captain Day's voice remained completely calm. As he addressed the fleeing Allied ships, "You might want to stop retreating and watch this carefully," he suggested. "It is not something you will see every day, and Harmony enjoys having an audience for her favorite performances." Admiral Zex could not contain his horror. "Captain, those are planet killer weapons," he shouted through the communication system. "They can destroy entire worlds, crack continents, and boil away oceans. You must retreat immediately before they fire worlds." "Yes," agreed Captain Day thoughtfully. "But Harmony is not a world, is she? She is something much more interesting and much more durable than a simple planet." The planet killers fired simultaneously, releasing beams of energy that were equivalent to multiple exploding stars. The combined power was capable of cracking the crust of any world and had been used to eliminate countless civilizations throughout the galaxy. The energy release lit up the entire star system like a second sun being born. The beams struck Harmony directly, and for a terrifying moment, her beautiful crystalline form was completely hidden by the blazing destructive energy. Every observer was certain they had just witnessed the end of the mysterious human vessel, and possibly the end of any hope for victory against the Devourers. Then the energy began to fade, and Harmony emerged completely unharmed. In fact, she appeared to be absorbing the deadly power, her crystalline structure glowing brighter and more beautiful than ever before. The planet killer beams were being drawn into her like water flowing into a sponge. "Thank you," came Captain Day's voice, and he actually sounded pleased and grateful. Harmony was getting a bit hungry. Planet killer energy happens to be her favorite type of nourishment. What happened next would be remembered and retold for generations across every world in the galaxy. Harmony began to sing. The song that came from Harmony was not sound in any normal sense, but rather a vibration that seemed to touch every living soul within a light-year radius. It was hauntingly beautiful, filled with harmonies that spoke directly to the deepest parts of consciousness and memory. The melody told ancient stories of starlight being born of worlds forming from cosmic dust, and of life spreading across the universe like seeds carried on solar winds. Every person who heard the song felt something change. Inside them, warriors who had known only battle suddenly remembered the beauty of peaceful sunsets. Traders who thought only of profit found themselves thinking about the friends they had made on distant worlds. Scientists who studied death and destruction felt their hearts fill with wonder at the magnificent complexity of living creatures. The song carried different meanings for different species, but for everyone it was a reminder of possibilities they had forgotten or never known existed. It spoke of cooperation instead of conflict, of understanding instead of fear, of growth instead of destruction. Admiral Zex found tears streaming down his scarred face as the melody washed over him. He remembered why he had first joined the military, not to conquer or destroy, but to protect the innocent and preserve the things he loved. The song reminded him of his homeworld's twin moons and the way they looked when they rose together over the crystal forests where he had played as a child. "What is she?" he whispered, his voice filled with awe and wonder. Captain Day's answer came softly, carrying deep respect and love for his incredible ship. "Harmony is what humans discovered when we stopped trying to conquer the universe and started trying to understand it. She is not really a ship at all, Admiral. She is what we call a consciousness ship, a living partnership between human minds and the fundamental forces of reality itself." The young woman named Sua spoke for the first time since the battle began, her voice somehow carrying across all communication channels with the same gentle authority as Harmony's song. "We are 37 human minds joined willingly with a conscious fragment of the universe itself. We do not fight battles, Admiral. We convince the universe that there are better ways to resolve conflicts." As Sua spoke, her image appeared on view screens throughout both fleets. She looked like an ordinary young woman except for her eyes, which held depths that seemed to contain galaxies. Her smile was warm and welcoming, but there was something ancient and vast behind it that made even the oldest beings feel young and inexperienced. "We have learned that the universe itself is alive." She continued her words somehow, reaching into the hearts of every listener. "It has consciousness and will and desires, just like any living creature. The difference is that its desires are for growth and beauty and complexity rather than destruction and simplification." Throughout the Devourer fleet, something unprecedented was happening. Warriors, who had never known anything but hunger and the urge to consume, were suddenly experiencing emotions they had no names for. Curiosity, wonder, appreciation. For beauty, these concepts had been completely alien to their species for millions of years. Supreme Commander Vex found himself staring at the stars with completely new eyes. Instead of seeing resources to be harvested and worlds to be devoured, he saw incredible beauty and magnificent complexity that took his breath away. "What have you done to us?" he transmitted to the human ship, his voice filled with confusion, but strangely no longer containing any anger. Captain Day's response was patient and kind. "We have not done anything to you," he explained gently. "Harmony simply reminded you of possibilities your species had forgotten long ago. The choice of what to do with that reminder is entirely yours to make." On Devourer ships throughout the fleet, warriors began laying down their weapons. Some wept as they remembered homeworlds they had helped destroy, feeling regret and sorrow for the first time in their existence. Others simply stood in silent wonder, finally understanding what they had been eliminating in their mindless hunger for consumption. A young devourer named Crix, who had never questioned his purpose in life, suddenly found himself thinking about a small blue world his ship had consumed the previous year. He remembered the way the oceans had sparkled in the sunlight just before they were drained away, and for the first time he felt something that might have been sadness for its loss. Throughout the Allied fleet, similar changes were taking place. Species that had been bitter enemies for centuries found themselves looking at each other with new understanding. Aquarians, who had always feared the mechanical Iron Federation, suddenly saw the beauty in their precise engineering crystalline beings who had considered organic life forms to be chaotic. And Messi began to appreciate the incredible complexity of biological systems. Admiral Zex contacted the human ship with a question that was burning in his mind. "Captain Day, how many ships like Harmony does humanity possess? If you have more vessels, like this one, why did you not send them all to ensure our victory?" "Currently, we have 12 such ships," Day replied matter-of-factly. "Though that number changes as more humans choose to join with universal consciousness, it is not something we can force or create artificially. The partnership must be willing on both sides, and it requires a complete transformation of how someone thinks about existence itself." The implications of this statement hit the Allied fleet like a physical blow. Humanity possessed 12 vessels, each one apparently capable of ending conflicts without violence and turning enemies into friends through understanding rather than force. If the humans had wanted to, they could probably have conquered the entire galaxy. Years ago, Commander Yuki, who had remained silent throughout the entire battle, finally spoke up from her observation ship orbiting safely behind the main fleet. "This is why Earth sent only one ship, Admiral," she explained. "We have learned over many years that the universe responds much better to cooperation than to coercion. Harmony could have ended this conflict in the first few minutes, but she chose to give everyone time to understand what was really happening." "But what about our fleets?" asked Admiral Zex, his voice heavy with uncertainty. "What happens to our military traditions, our warrior cultures, our entire way of life, if conflicts can be resolved without fighting?" Sua's warm voice came through the communication systems again, filled with compassion and understanding. "Nothing has to change unless you want it to," she assured them. "Harmony's song does not force anyone to become different. It simply opens doorways to new possibilities that were always there but hidden. Some of your people might choose to explore those possibilities, while others might prefer to continue living as they always have. Both choices are equally valid and valuable." The song gradually began to fade, but its effects continued to ripple through. Both fleets' devourer ships that had been preparing to destroy everything in their path now floated quietly as their crews struggled to understand their new feelings. Allied vessels that had been ready to fight to the death found their weapons, powered down, and their crews talking to former enemies. Captain Day watched these peaceful interactions with quiet satisfaction from Harmony's bridge, which had returned to its normal appearance of comfortable chairs arranged around the central platform where Sua stood. "Another successful first contact," he said to his crew with a slight smile. "I think we are getting better at this type of work." Lieutenant Hal, who monitored communications throughout the fleet, nodded as he observed the conversations taking place across dozens of different ships. "Do you think they will remember this experience when they return to their home worlds? Will the changes be permanent, or will they fade when they get back to their normal lives?" Sua, her eyes still glowing, softly, with her connection to Harmony, looked out at the peaceful scene with confidence. "They will remember," she said with certainty. "More importantly, they will share what they have learned with others. Change spreads like ripples in a pond. Each person, touched by understanding, becomes capable of touching others in the same way. As both fleets began making preparations to return to their home systems, something unprecedented began happening. Representatives from different species started talking to each other, not as military allies bound together by necessity, but as individuals curious about each other's experiences and perspectives. The transformation of the galaxy had begun, and it was more beautiful than anyone could have imagined. 3 days had passed since the angry meeting at the Galactic Council, and now the combined alien fleet hung in the darkness of space near the Meridian system. This was their last chance to stop the Devourers before the hungry monsters reached the core worlds where billions of innocent people lived. Admiral Zex stood on the bridge of his massive Vorthon dreadnought, looking out at the thousands of ships that surrounded him. Vessels from 12 different species floated together in the largest military formation the galaxy had ever seen. Sleek Aquarian cruisers moved like silver fish next to the brutal angular warships of the Iron Federation. Crystalline vessels sparkled like giant jewels, while Krillian fighters buzzed around, them like angry insects. The old admiral had fought in more battles than he could count, but he had never seen an enemy like the Devourers. Every species they encountered was completely consumed. Their worlds were broken apart and turned into raw materials to build even more Devourer ships. Their people were either killed or transformed into mindless servants. There was no negotiation, no surrender, no mercy. Tactical Officer Bin worked at his control station, his multiple eyes studying the sensor displays with growing worry. "Sir?" He reported, his voice tight with fear. "The Devourer fleet is enormous. Our long-range scouts have detected at least 10,000 enemy vessels, including several planet-killer ships. Some of their largest vessels are bigger than our space stations." Admiral Zex nodded grimly. He had hoped the reports were wrong, but now there was no doubt they faced an enemy that outnumbered them 3-1 and had technology that seemed impossible to understand or defeat. The Devourers had weapons that could crack planets in half and shields that absorbed energy attacks like a sponge soaking up water. Any word from the humans asked Commander Rio, a Krillian officer who served as the Admiral's strategic advisor. His insect-like features twitched with irritation every time he thought about Earth's pathetic contribution to their defense. "They claim their ship will arrive within the hour." Admiral Zex replied, his voice heavy with barely controlled anger. "One vessel against 10,000. Either the humans have completely lost their minds, or they are hiding something very important from the rest of us." Communications Officer Sora suddenly straightened at her workstation, her tentacles moving quickly over the "Controls, Admiral!" she called out excitedly. "I am detecting a massive energy signature approaching from the human territory. Whatever it is large enough to register on our long-range sensors from 8 million kilometers away." The main view screen at the front of the bridge flickered and changed to show the star field where the human ship was supposed to appear. A small dot of light grew slowly larger as it approached the Allied fleet. Every officer on the bridge leaned forward, trying to get a better look at humanity's mysterious contribution to their defense. What emerged from the darkness made everyone gasp in complete surprise. The human vessel looked nothing like any ship they had ever seen, instead of the smooth curves favored by most aquatic species or the sharp angles preferred by warrior races. It was a perfect sphere. The entire surface was polished silver that reflected the light of nearby stars and seemed to glow with its own inner radiance. Strange patterns were carved into the metal, creating designs that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. The sphere was enormous, easily 3 times larger than Admiral Zex's flagship, and probably big enough to hold a small city inside. But despite its huge size, it moved through space with impossible grace, gliding silently between the other ships without any visible engines or propulsion systems. "That cannot be right," muttered Bin, checking his sensor readings over and over again. "It is showing up as one solid piece of metal. No engine signatures, no weapon ports, no shield generators, nothing. I cannot even detect life support systems. How is it moving? How are people living inside it?" The mysterious sphere took its position directly in front of the Allied fleet, placing itself between the other ships and the approaching Devourer threat. As it settled into place, Captain Day's voice came through the communication system, sounding as calm and relaxed as if he was discussing the weather. "This is Captain Day of the human vessel Harmony," he announced. "We are ready to engage the enemy when they arrive. Please maintain your current positions and prepare to observe." Admiral Zex stared at the strange sphere on his view screen, trying to understand what he was seeing. After 40 years of military service and battles across dozens of star systems, he had never encountered anything remotely like this human ship. "Captain Day," he said, speaking into his communications unit, "what exactly is your vessel's classification?" "We need to coordinate our battle plans and defensive strategies." There was a long pause before Day responded, and when his voice came through the speakers, there was something that sounded almost like amusement hidden in his tone. "Classification is unique, Admiral. Do not worry about coordination. Just keep your ship safely behind us and watch what happens." Commander Rio clicked his mandibles together in frustration. "That is not an answer," he complained. "How can we plan tactics if we do not know what capabilities their ship possesses? What weapons does it carry? What defensive systems does it use? How fast can it move?" Before anyone could demand more information from the humans, the space around them began to change. Long-range sensors detected massive energy distortions approaching from the outer system. The Devourer fleet was finally arriving, and they were about to discover what 10,000 hungry monsters looked like when they came to feed: the darkness. Between the stars, suddenly filled with points of red light as enemy ships dropped out of hyperspace. The Devourers had arrived in overwhelming numbers just as the scouts had reported. Their vessels were dark and angular with glowing crimson energy, running along their hulls like veins of molten blood. They moved in perfect formation, spreading out to surround the Allied fleet like predators circling wounded prey. On his command ship, Devourer, Supreme Commander. Vex studied the pathetic resistance that awaited his forces. These defenders looked no different from the hundreds of other species his fleet had already consumed. They would break and scatter just like all the others had done. Look at that large sphere positioned in front of their fleet, he told his tactical officer. "It must contain their leaders. We will destroy it first and watch the others flee in terror like frightened children." His officer examined the sensor readings with growing confusion. "Supreme Commander, that's spherical. Vessel shows no energy signatures at all. No weapons, no shields, no engines. It appears to be completely dead in space." "Perfect," laughed Commander Vex, the sound like grinding metal, an easy first target to break their morale. "Order the first attack wave to focus all firepower on that useless sphere." 200 Devourer ships broke from the main formation and accelerated toward the human vessel. Their weapons began charging with deadly red energy that had melted through the armor of countless enemy fleets. The alien alliance watched in growing horror as the silver sphere made no attempt to defend itself, retreat, or even acknowledge the approaching threat. Captain Day sat peacefully in the center of Harmony's bridge, which looked nothing like the control room of any normal spaceship. Instead of screens and control panels and weapon stations, the circular chamber contained only comfortable chairs arranged around a central platform where a young woman named Sua stood with her eyes closed, incoming. "Enemy fire in 30 seconds, reported Lieutenant Hal from his position. Like everyone else on the human crew, he seemed remarkably calm for someone about to face the combined firepower of 200 alien warships. "Thank you, Hal." "Captain," Day replied. "Politely, Sua, are you ready to begin?" The young woman opened her eyes, which now glowed with soft blue light that seemed to contain stars. "All systems are responding perfectly." "Captain," she said in a voice filled with quiet confidence. "Shall we show them what a real human ship can do when she stops pretending to be normal?" Day smiled and nodded. "Light them up, Sua." The first wave of Devourer ships opened fire at exactly the same moment, sending thousands of energy beams and explosive missiles toward the motionless silver sphere. The combined attack was powerful enough to destroy a small moon and turn solid rock into glowing plasma. Every alien observer held their breath, expecting to see the mysterious human vessel vaporized instantly by the overwhelming assault. Instead, something completely impossible happened. Every beam and missile simply stopped moving several meters away from the sphere's surface, frozen in space, as if time itself had been paused around the human ship. The deadly light show hung motionless in the vacuum, creating a beautiful and terrifying display of suspended destruction. Then, with a brilliant flash of blue energy that lit up the entire battlefield, every single attack reversed direction and flew back toward the ships that had fired them. 6 months after the incredible encounter at the Meridian system, the effects of Harmony's song continued to ripple across the galaxy like waves spreading from a stone dropped in still water. News of the peaceful transformation of the Devourer. Fleet had reached every inhabited world, and the story grew more amazing with each telling on. The Vorthan homeworld Admiral Zex stood before the High Command Council, trying to explain what had happened to beings who had never experienced anything. Like consciousness partnership, the ancient generals listened with expressions of disbelief as their most trusted field commander described weapons that reflected themselves and enemies who became allies after hearing a song. You expect us to believe that one human ship defeated 10,000 Devourer vessels without firing a single shot, asked Grand Marshal Cole, his 4 arms crossed in skepticism, and that their secret weapon was music. It was not music, Admiral Zex replied patiently, though he knew how impossible his words sounded. It was communication on a level we had never imagined possible. The humans have learned to partner with the universe itself, and that partnership gives them abilities that seem like magic to those of us who still think in terms of conventional technology. The council chamber erupted in arguments and debates. Some members demanded that Vorthan scientists immediately begin researching consciousness ship technology, while others insisted the whole story was an elaborate human deception designed to make other species lower their guard. Meanwhile, on the crystal world of Zephyria, similar debates were taking place as their representatives tried to explain how former enemies had become research partners. The Zephyrian Council of Harmonics had always believed that consciousness could be expanded through meditation and crystal resonance, but the idea of merging with universal awareness seemed beyond even their advanced understanding. In the depths of space, the Galactic Consciousness Research Institute was taking shape inside what had once been a Devourer command station. The massive vessel was being converted into laboratories and meeting facilities where beings from different species could work together to explore the mysteries of expanded awareness. Director Vex, the former Devourer, Supreme Commander, walked through the corridors with his co-director Admiral Zex, marveling at how much had changed in just a few months. Where once there had been weapon storage and torture chambers, there were now comfortable meeting rooms where former enemies shared meals and discussed philosophy. The research is proceeding faster than we dared hope, reported Dr. Sua, who had accepted a position as Chief Consciousness Researcher while maintaining her connection to Harmony. We have documented 17 different methods that various species use to expand their awareness beyond individual boundaries. Some involve technology, others use biological enhancement, and a few rely purely on meditation and mental discipline. The most promising development was the discovery that consciousness partnerships were not limited to humans. Several Aquarian volunteers had successfully merged with oceanic organisms from their homeworld, creating a collective intelligence that could process information at incredible speeds. A group of crystalline researchers had achieved temporary unity with their planet's geological consciousness, gaining insights into deep time and planetary evolution, but not every experiment was successful. Many beings found that their minds were simply not flexible enough to accept partnership with larger forms of consciousness. The process required a willingness to surrender. individual identity that most species found terrifying rather than appealing. Captain Day visited the Institute, regularly traveling aboard Harmony to observe the research and offer guidance based on humanity's experience with consciousness ships. During one such visit, he met with a young Krillian scientist named Rin, who had been working for months to achieve partnership with a collective insect intelligence. "I can sense the collective mind," Rin explained, his compound eyes reflecting frustration. "I can feel its vast knowledge and cooperative spirit, but every time I try to join with it, something in my brain pulls back. I cannot overcome my fear of losing myself." Captain Day nodded with understanding. "That fear is natural and healthy," he assured the young scientist. "It means you are not yet ready for full partnership. But that does not mean you have failed. The universe has many different ways of expanding consciousness, and some of them preserve individual identity while still allowing connection to larger patterns." He introduced Rin to Lieutenant Hal, who had developed a technique for maintaining partial connection to Harmony while retaining complete individual autonomy. This middle path allowed limited access to enhanced awareness, without requiring the complete transformation that full consciousness partnership demanded. The success stories from the Institute began attracting attention from across the galaxy. Species that had never heard of consciousness ships started sending representatives to learn about peaceful conflict resolution. Planets that had been locked in civil wars for centuries requested visits from Harmony or one of her sister ships, the Andromedans, who had isolated themselves from galactic civilization. For thousands of years, sent their first diplomatic mission in millennia specifically to meet the consciousness ships, they had achieved their own form of species-wide telepath.